Welcome to the Explainer. So today, we're going to break down a technology that quite literally powers much of the modern internet, VMware virtualization. I mean, this is an idea that totally reshaped how we think about computers.
Think about it. Why would you buy, power, and maintain 10 different machines when you could get all that same work done with just one? This simple question, it's really the key to understanding the whole concept of virtualization and, the modern cloud too.
Okay, so to really get why this was such a genius solution, you first have to understand the problem, right? We got to look at the old way of doing things, which, let's just say it was super inefficient. This was the era of one box, one job.
So picture this. For every single app you wanted to run, you had to go out and buy this huge piece of land. And then you'd build just one tiny little house on it. I mean, the waste was just enormous, right? And that was the reality for data centers. Every single application needed its own physical server. And get this, on average, like 85% of that server's processing power was just sitting there, doing absolutely nothing, just wasting away. So you have to ask, what if we could build up on that same plot of land? What if we could fit a whole bunch of homes, all efficiently, all safely, each with its own secure space, but they're all sharing that same foundation? Well, that is exactly what virtualization does. It uses software to basically slice up one really powerful physical server into a bunch of smaller, totally isolated virtual computers.
Okay, so how does this even work, right? I mean, how do you make one computer act like it's 10 different computers, all at the same time? It really does feel like magic, but it all comes down to this really brilliant layer of software that sits right at the very foundation.
Yeah, let's really stick with this apartment building analogy because I think it makes everything else just click into place. So the physical server, that's our expensive plot of land. And virtualization, that's the big plan to stop building those single houses and start building a high-rise apartment building on it instead. And every great building starts with one thing, a really solid foundation.
So that foundation, that's the hypervisor. It's the foundation and all the shared utilities for our apartment building. It's just a lightweight piece of software, something like VMware's ESXi, that you install directly on the hardware. Its job is to manage all the physical stuff, the CPU, the memory, the storage, and then it carefully hands out those resources to all the apartments that are going to be built on top. It's the magic layer that makes this whole thing possible.
All right, so the hypervisors laid the foundation. Now, what about the actual apartments we're building on top of it? Well, these are the individual units where all the work actually gets done. We call them virtual machines.
So each virtual machine, or VM for short, it's like its own self-contained, totally isolated apartment. It gets its own operating system, think of that as the furniture, and its own applications, which are like the residents. And from the inside, if you're an application, a VM looks and feels exactly like a real physical computer. But in reality, it's really just a set of files running on that main server, all managed by the hypervisor.
And this, right here, is where the real revolution happens. I mean, just look at the difference. On the left, you've got your physical server. It's chained to its hardware, it's expensive, and it can take weeks to set up. But on the right, the virtual machine is just software. It's completely independent of the hardware. You can spin up a new one in minutes, you can copy it, you can move it to a totally different physical server without even skipping a beat. This was an absolute game changer for speed and flexibility.
And, just like a real apartment building, you can't just have hundreds of tenants running around with no management, right? So VMware gives you a whole suite of tools for this. You've got vCenter Server, which is kind of like the building manager. It gives you one single dashboard to see everything that's going on. Then you have products like NSX and vSAN that handle all the complex networking and storage. They're like the building's internal wiring and all the shared storage lockers.
Okay, so we know how it works, but what's the real payoff? Why did this idea just completely take over the entire tech world? Well, the benefits they're just immense.
Yeah, the benefits are massive, but they really boil down to four main things. First, you've got server consolidation. You can fit way more tenants in one building. Second is isolation and security. A fire in one apartment isn't going to spread to the others. Third is efficiency. You're not wasting all that land or energy. And fourth, and this is a big one, agility. You can build a brand new apartment in just a few minutes. Let's take a closer look at a couple of these.
Wow, I mean, this chart really says it all, doesn't it? That bar on the left, that's the old way. 10 separate servers, 10 power cords, 10 times the cost, 10 times the space. And that tiny little bar on the right, that's the new way. One single virtualized host doing the exact same amount of work. We're not talking about a small improvement here. This is a revolutionary drop in cost, power consumption, and physical footprint.
And this brings us to that huge benefit of isolation.
So, back to our apartment analogy, if there's a problem in one apartment, say an application crashes or even worse, it gets a virus, that problem is completely contained within the walls of that one apartment. It has no way to affect any of the other residents in the building. This provides a massive boost in security and stability for everyone.
All right, so let's zoom out for a second and look at the really big picture. Because this whole concept, building these virtual apartment buildings, it's become the absolute bedrock of all modern computing.
So here's the crucial thing to understand. This isn't just some niche technology for big companies. The cloud services you use every single day, I'm talking streaming video, online storage, social media, they are all built on these exact same principles of virtualization. It's just on a scale that's almost impossible to imagine. It's not one apartment building anymore, it's an entire city of them, all running in the cloud.
You see, by turning rigid physical hardware into flexible, manageable software, virtualization didn't just change data centers. It created the entire foundation for the cloud. And that same idea is now being applied to everything else, to networking, to storage, even to entire applications. Which, it leaves us with a pretty powerful final question to think about. Now that we've figured out how to turn the physical world into code, what's the next thing we're going to completely rebuild?